Amid the U.S. China trade conflict, Vietnam, regarded by Xi Jinping as a close ally, has aligned with U.S. President Trump's call and taken firm measures against Beijing. On July 7, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade announced that anti-dumping tariffs have been imposed on certain Chinese steel products, effective immediately. On July 4th, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade issued Decision Number 1959 QD-BCT imposing anti-dumping duties on certain hot-rolled steel (HRC) products imported from China, while terminating the investigation into similar products from India. The decision imposes anti-dumping duties on Chinese steel ranging from 23.1% to 27.8%. These duties took effect on July 6 and will remain in place for 5 years unless extended, modified, or canceled per regulations. On March 7, Vietnam imposed temporary anti-dumping duties for 120 days. The new duties extend and confirm these measures. Affected companies include Boshan Iron and Steel and Mashan Iron and Steel, and Guangxi Luzhou Iron and Steel Group. All are state-owned enterprises. On July 2nd, U.S. President Trump announced on social media a trade agreement with Vietnam. He stated that all Vietnamese exports to the U.S. will face at least 20% tariff, with the U.S., quote, fully opening its market to Vietnam. Previously, Vietnam faced up to 46% reciprocal tariffs. Trump also noted that products involved in transshipment trade, goods originating from other countries but transited through Vietnam, will face a higher 40% tariff. According to Bloomberg, this move will affect products containing components from China or other countries that are transshipped or simply assembled in Vietnam before export to the U.S. This approach mirrors provisions in existing U.S. trade agreements with Mexico and Canada. Commentator Chen Baidu stated that Vietnam's stance indicates a clear choice of sides, delivering a significant blow to the Chinese Communist Party's country of origin washing strategy. If other countries follow suit, Chinese products, whether exported directly or indirectly, will face substantial barriers. Customs data shows that in 2024, Vietnam imported 12.6 million tons of hot-rolled steel from China, an increase of over 33% from 2023. In July last year, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade launched an anti-dumping investigation into hot-rolled steel coils from China and India. After the investigation began, imports of hot-rolled steel from China continued to increase significantly. In February, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade announced that hot-rolled steel imported from China and India was being dumped. After the investigation, imports from India were assembled as negligible, accounting for less than 3% of total imports, and were exempt from tariffs, while steel from China was subject to tariffs. Previously, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade had announced that, starting April 16, a 37.13% temporary anti-dumping tariff would be imposed on certain galvanized steel products originating from China. Before imposing tariffs on Chinese steel, Vietnam's Prime Minister publicly stated intentions to combat origin fraud, emphasizing stricter origin reviews for goods exported to the U.S. and severe penalties for violating companies. This was directed at China. In April, Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade issued a directive stating that, amid escalating global trade tensions due to U.S. tariff policies, some companies might falsify origin information to evade sanctions. This would not only harm Vietnam's interests, but also make it harder for the country to avoid import restrictions from other nations. Vietnam also announced plans to collaborate with U.S. Customs, including shared data and jointly investigating Chinese companies suspected of violating regulations. A list of these companies has already been provided to U.S. authorities. Ex-user Alex Chen noted that in 2024, 61.7% of Vietnam's imported steel came from China. The impact of China's dumped steel on Vietnam's steel industry has been substantial. Trump may be using reciprocal tariff negotiations to press Southeast Asian nations for concessions, thereby gradually fragmenting the vast made-in-China system and increasing pressure on China. Vietnam's imposing anti-dumping duties on Chinese steel products goes beyond protecting the domestic steel industry and signals alignment with the U.S. against China. Alex Chen believes that after Vietnam sets this precedent, other countries are likely to follow, subjecting China's export industry to dual pressures from high U.S. tariffs and anti-dumping duties from other nations. ASEAN countries may increasingly side with the U.S., indicating a reshaping of global supply chains. Vietnam is China's second-largest trading partner in ASEAN, importing up to $144 billion from China in 2024, including $30 billion in the first quarter. In April, Vietnam and China signed 45 cooperation agreements covering areas such as railways, supply chains, and digital economy. Commentator Xing Tianqing wrote that in this context, the Chinese government is unlikely to risk a fallout with Vietnam. With its economy facing challenges, China cannot afford significant disruptions. Its strategy resembles a carrot-and-stick approach, offering loans and investments to build ties with ASEAN, while increasing military exercises in the South China Sea and occasionally interfering with fishing vessels to demonstrate strength, but avoiding full escalation. Direct conflict is improbable, as China seeks to preserve relations with important partners. Within ASEAN, beyond Vietnam's actions towards China, even smaller countries like Vietnam are participating in efforts that challenge Beijing. In April, shortly after Chinese President Xi Jinping concluded a state visit to Cambodia, where the Cambodian government described that China-Cambodia relationship as an ironclad friendship, Cambodia amended laws to prevent Chinese goods from being exported to the U.S. via Cambodia amid pressure from U.S. reciprocal tariffs. That month, according to the Cambodia-China Times, to avoid being caught in the U.S. China trade war, the Cambodian government decided to revise its regulations, enhancing audits and oversight of import and export origins to prevent the country from serving as a hub for relabeling Chinese products. Storm Media reported that after President Trump launched the reciprocal tariff policy on over 180 countries worldwide, Cambodia's exports faced tariffs up to 49%, making it one of Asia's most affected nations, exceeding Vietnam's 46% and Laos's 47%. In response, the Cambodian Deputy Prime Minister and first Vice Chairman of the Council for the Development of Cambodia led the Cambodian-U.S. Trade Investment Relations Working Group in negotiations with the U.S. Trade Representative. Casey Barnett, president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Cambodia, noted that the Cambodian government is developing new procedures and standards to strictly prevent foreign goods from transiting through Cambodia to the U.S., hoping to show goodwill to Washington and to gain greater trust and economic cooperation. As mentioned, Vietnam and Cambodia have taken steps against China, and key ASEAN member Indonesia has also acted. According to International Daily, Indonesia's Deputy Minister of Industry recently stated that the government plans to impose anti-dumping or safeguard measures on Chinese imports in border areas. This aims to protect local manufacturing from unfair competition, particularly in key sectors like steel, aluminum, textiles, and footwear. Analysts believe that the recent U.S. imposition of 30% tariffs on Chinese goods, along with China's 10% tariff on U.S. products, may drive some Chinese exporters to emerging markets like Indonesia. Indonesia is concerned that Chinese steel, aluminum, and other products diverted from the U.S. could flood its market and further pressure local industries. In recent years, Indonesia has imposed anti-dumping duties on various Chinese products, including hot-rolled coils, ceramic tiles, and polypropylene films. Meanwhile, the Indonesian government expressed confidence in reaching a bold trade agreement with the U.S. before tariff deadlines, covering energy, critical minerals, and defense cooperation to further strengthen bilateral economic and strategic ties. On July 3rd, Indonesian Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs announced that Indonesia will sign agreements worth $34 billion with U.S. business partners. On July 4th, the minister also stated that Indonesia would apply near-zero tariffs to over 1,700 U.S. goods, accounting for about 70% of its total imports from the U.S., including sectors of U.S. interests such as electronics, machinery, chemicals, medical supplies, steel, agriculture, and automotive. Commentator Xing Tianqing observed that Indonesia's moves are strategic. Observing Vietnam's gains, it promptly secured a $34 billion deal to maintain access to the U.S. market and avoid heavy tariffs. Although full details of the agreement are not yet disclosed, they likely emphasize origin regulations and market openness. Other Southeast Asian countries are following suit. Malaysia has stated it will not confront the U.S. Thailand has introduced new origin certification rules. And the Philippines, considering geopolitical and national security factors, has drawn closer to the U.S. ASEAN countries' positions increasingly appear to align with the U.S. In essence, Trump's tariffs have fostered a new dynamic. ASEAN is shifting from serving as China's trade relabeling workforce to becoming a growing satellite market for the U.S. The export web China meticulously built in Southeast Asia is being gradually dismantled by the U.S. ASEAN members are increasingly aligning with the U.S., notably Vietnam, which shares a similar political system with China. Under current economic and international conditions, China may have to endure these developments silently. China's other staunch ally, North Korea, is showing signs of strain in the relationship. Last year, as North Korea-Russia ties strengthened, signs of distancing emerged in China-North Korea relations. South Korea's Chosun Ilbo reported that starting June 20th, 2024, North Korea ceased using Chinese satellites for television broadcasts and switched to Russian ones. In July of the same year, Beijing repeatedly requested Pyongyang to recall all North Korean dispatch workers from various parts of China, estimated to number in the tens of thousands. On September 20th, 2024, South Korea's Jung-an Ilbo cited multiple sources familiar with North Korea, reporting that leader Kim Jong-un referred to China as an arch-enemy during that period, in response to Beijing's increasing pressure on the country. This is a rare statement from North Korea, allied with China. Jung-an Ilbo analyzed that it may be linked to Beijing's firm measures against North Korea's smuggling activities at the time, including confiscating Kim Jong-un's personal number one goods and refusing to return them. In North Korea, Kim Jong-un's personal remarks are systematically promoted and implemented within the party and military, serving as a code of conduct. This largely determines the tone of North Korea-China relations. Previously, North Korea repeatedly failed to send diplomatic envoys to official Chinese events, openly showing dissatisfaction. In July 2024, Kim Jong-un issued a similar directive to North Korean diplomats in China, instructing them not to concern themselves with China's feelings. On July 31st, 2024, China's Ministry of Defense held a reception at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing to celebrate the 97th anniversary of the Chinese military's founding, but North Korea's military attaché in China did not attend. Diplomatic sources commented that this contrasted sharply with North Korea's previous active participation in various Chinese commemorative events. This was not the first time Kim Jong-un expressed dissatisfaction with China. Han Kim-bum, former first and third deputy director of South Korea's National Intelligence Service and a guest researcher at the ASEAN Institute for Policy Studies, stated in a March 2024 report that Kim Jong-un had previously referred to China as an arch-enemy. The report noted that in early 2015, Kim Jong-un said, "The US and Japan are our 100-year enemies, but China is a 5,000-year enemy," and asserted that North Korea could survive without China, so no concessions would be made even on minor issues. The report analyzed that after CCP leader Xi Jinping visited South Korea in July 2014 before visiting North Korea, Kim Jong-un viewed this as a clear betrayal. Subsequently, in 2015, Kim Jong-un made expanding and developing relations with Russia a goal of his foreign policy. North Korea has relied on China's support for survival, but when Beijing fails to provide resources or adopts tough measures, it inevitably leads to dissatisfaction, resulting in a term like arch-enemy. Among China's many allies, Pakistan is known as the Iron Brother, referring to the long-standing, solid alliance between China and Pakistan, meaning ironclad friends. This term originates from Chinese netizens' affectionate expression of friendly relations. However, on the Belt and Road Initiative, this ally had voiced opposition. Pakistan has been promoted by China as a model for the Belt and Road Initiative. However, the Pakistani government has requested adjustments to the Belt and Road goals. In July 2018, under Prime Minister Imran Khan, the Pakistani government advocated for major revisions to the $62 billion China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the most ambitious part of the Belt and Road Initiative, focusing on building highways, railways, power plants, and ports. Pakistani officials stated that CPEC will shift towards building Chinese private factories, incorporating more Pakistani suppliers and workers, and including social service projects such as healthcare and clean water. The government also ordered an audit of the metro train project in Lahore, the largest infrastructure project at the time, costing $2 billion. Additionally, the influx of Chinese goods has caused dissatisfaction among Pakistani businesses. Pakistan and Beijing are exploring ways to improve trade balances. Andrew Small, author of the China-Pakistan Axis, stated that whatever happens in Pakistan will echo more broadly on the Belt and Road Initiative. For China, the important point is to prevent CPEC from becoming another public embarrassment. On the Belt and Road issue, Malaysia's government canceled 3 Belt and Road projects. The international think tank Center for Global Development has estimated that the Belt and Road Initiative has caused difficulties for countries like Djibouti, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, the Maldives, Mongolia, Montenegro, Pakistan, and Tajikistan, most of which are close to China. Even Africa has become impacted. Central News Agency reported that Boston University estimates Chinese financial institutions provided $170 billion in loans to Africa from 2000 to 2022, with debt becoming a hidden risk for many countries. Zambia became the first African nation to default on sovereign debt due to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, while governments in Ghana, Kenya, and Ethiopia continued to struggle. In 2023, Indian Prime Minister Modi indirectly criticized certain forces for exploiting other countries' vulnerabilities and leading them into debt traps. On the pandemic issue, China's African brother Nigeria experienced a dispute with Beijing. In 2020, Nigeria's Daily Post reported that the coalition of Nigerian legal practitioners demanded $200 billion from China as compensation for losses from the COVID-19 virus, including lives, economy, psychological trauma, and disruption of normal life. The plaintiff's representative, Chief Prosecutor Epiphany Azinge, stated in a declaration that they strongly support legal action, first filing at Nigeria's Federal High Court, then convincing the Nigerian government to sue the People's Republic of China at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. China issues researcher Zhang Jian told foreign media at the time that this was a significant step, potentially unexpected by China. Although China-Africa relations are solid, Africa resorted to legal action during the pandemic outbreak, taking China to international court, which was unforeseen by Beijing. Lai Jianping, a master's in international law from China University of Political Science and Law, viewed Nigeria's lawsuit as symbolizing that China's so-called little brothers in Africa are beginning to oppose the big brother. Politically and morally, it serves as a clear indicator. In the future, incidents of China's allies turning against it are likely to increase. With the global situation increasingly isolating China and its domestic economy declining across the board, amid domestic and international disorder, Beijing's allies may continue to create tensions.